The night was supposed to be perfect. My husband Adrian and I had planned a small celebration for our daughter's 8th birthday, just family, a few close friends, soft lights across the backyard, and a table I'd arranged myself with pastel napkins and little glass jars of confetti she'd picked out. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was pretending. At least, that's how it felt when I caught the first crack in the evening. It happened as I leaned across the table to cut the cake. My sister-in-law Marlene brushed past me, pretending to reach for a fork, and something slipped from her clutch and hit the ground. A sealed white envelope. My name was written on it in her handwriting, but the corner was ripped, like someone had checked inside. Before I could reach for it, she snatched it up, slid it back into her bag, and gave me a sweet, practiced smile. "Don't worry about that," she said. "You'll see it later. If everything goes the way it should." The way it should? The phrase dug deep, and she knew it. She tilted her head, watching for my reaction the way someone watches a fuse burn. Around us, Adrian's relatives went quiet for half a breath, then resumed their chatter, too loudly, as if covering for something they all felt but didn't dare acknowledge. I tried to stay present for my daughter as she blew out her candles. I tried not to look at the faint bruise on Adrian's cousin's wrist, the one she kept hiding under her sleeve. I tried not to let Marlene's smug grin infect the room. But tension travels fast in families like his. All it takes is one offhand comment for the air to change shape. A few minutes later, when everyone gathered for photos, Marlene positioned herself right beside me and whispered, "You might want to enjoy this moment." Things tend to shift quickly after certain documents are signed. She didn't even blink. She just stepped forward and posed, smiling wide for the camera, as if she hadn't just taken a match to the night. I felt the tremor in the group, small, but unmistakable. Adrian was across the yard, laughing too loudly with his mother, pretending he didn't see his sister circling me like a shark. My mother-in-law Lois glanced over in my direction, then leaned toward him, whispering something that made him stiffen for a second before forcing a smile again. It was a performance I'd watched too many times. Someone handed me a slice of cake. Someone asked me about work. Someone commented on the lanterns I'd hung. And all the while, I kept thinking about that envelope, the ripped corner, and the phrase meant to unsettle me, "If everything goes the way it should." I've been in business long enough to recognize soft threats. They always come dressed in politeness. As the evening wound down, Lois approached me with a glass of sparkling water and said in that brittle, sugary tone she used whenever she wanted me quiet, "Let's keep tonight peaceful. It's a child's birthday, after all." She said it with such authority that a few people nearby nodded, as if I had already done something wrong. I didn't respond. Silence can be strategic, and she hated that. Our daughter tugged my hand, wanting to open gifts. I forced myself to smile for her sake, but inside something sharp had clicked into place. A line had been crossed tonight. And the way the family was behaving, coordinated, unified, too synchronized to be accidental, told me that whatever they were planning had been in motion long before this party. While she unwrapped presents, I watched Adrian carefully. He avoided my eyes, and every so often, he checked his phone with a tense flick of his thumb. That was when the cold certainty slid through me. He knew. Maybe not every detail, but enough. Enough to stand on their side tonight. And that's when the real question hit me like cold water. What exactly were they expecting me to sign? I glanced at the guests around us, all pretending to be cheery and oblivious. But the looks they exchanged, those quick, nervous glances, told me the truth. They were waiting for something. They were counting on something. Something involving me. And since you're watching this, let me ask you directly, have you ever been at a family event where you sensed everyone else knew something you didn't? What tipped you off? And if you've been through it, what happened when you finally confronted the truth? Tell me in the comments. I want to see how others navigated moments like this. Because on this night, at my child's birthday party, while everyone smiled and pretended everything was perfect, I made myself a quiet promise. A promise that no matter what they were orchestrating, no matter how neat their plan looked from the outside, they were going to regret assuming I wouldn't notice. They thought they were handling me. They thought I'd stay in the dark. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. 2 weeks before that birthday night, the night everything cracked, I'd already sensed a shift I couldn't name yet. It began with a small conversation I wasn't supposed to overhear. I was leaving Adrian's parents' house after Sunday lunch, stepping back inside because I'd forgotten my scarf. The hallway was quiet, and the kitchen door was slightly open. I heard Marlene's voice, sharp and impatient. "She needs to be kept in line," she said. "If she pushes back, we move forward with the fallback plan. Adrian understands that." I froze. Kept in line? What was that supposed to mean? I stayed perfectly still, just out of sight, listening for context, but all I heard next was Lois's calm, clipped tone. "We'll finalize everything before she finds out. The board meets on the 20th. All we need is her signature. After that, she can't undo it." My heart thudded once, hard. I didn't know what document they were referring to, what signature they needed, or why they were so confident I'd give it. But I did know one thing: they were planning around me, not with me. Planning quietly. Coordinating. That should have been my first alert, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was about something minor. Maybe it was about a family donation. Maybe I misheard. Except the next day, Adrian came home acting off. Not angry, not distant, just performative. Like he was trying on a version of himself that didn't quite fit. He kissed my cheek, complimented dinner, asked about my day, little niceties he usually offered naturally. But now, each gesture felt premeditated, as if he were rehearsing sincerity. Then he got a text. His face tightened for a second before he forced a relaxed expression. He placed his phone face down on the counter. I tried to ignore it. I tried to stay grounded. But patterns matter. And another pattern emerged that week: unsolicited helpfulness. Lois invited me to lunch just to reconnect. Marlene called offering to pick up our daughter from school, to give me a break. Adrian insisted on scheduling a quick meeting with our family accountant, saying something vague about tidying up paperwork. None of them usually went out of their way to help me. Not like this. The shift wasn't subtle. It was coordinated, as if they wanted to keep me soft, agreeable, and distracted. When I arrived at the accountant's office 3 days later, that feeling only solidified. The accountant, a man named Boyd who had worked with the family for years, greeted me with an overly bright smile that faltered at the edges. He handed me a folder but kept his thumb pressed on the top page as if to keep me from looking too closely. "These are standard yearly updates," he said. "Just making sure the household trust documents stay organized." Household trust? We didn't have a household trust. At least, not one I knew about. When I reached for the folder, he slid it slightly toward himself instead of toward me. "Actually, Adrian wanted to review these with you first. We can wait until he comes by." He was protecting something. I didn't push it then, but I stored that moment like a file in a locked drawer. Nothing about this was accidental. Later that evening, as I was preparing dinner, I walked into the living room and found Adrian pacing while on a call. "Yeah, she won't fight it," he was saying quietly. "She's reasonable. She'll sign if it looks routine." When he noticed me, he ended the call mid-sentence and plastered on a smile. "Work stuff," he said. "Nothing important." But he never paced on work calls. He listened on work calls, calm, seated, focused. This was different. This was stress. This was coordination. The following morning, while searching for my daughter's missing sweater, I opened Adrian's laptop to check if she had left it in the car. The laptop wasn't locked. On the screen was an email draft addressed to his mother and sister titled, "Before she asks questions." My pulse quickened. I didn't have time to read it. He walked into the room, and I closed the laptop immediately. But that subject line stuck in my mind like a thorn. Before she asks questions. Meaning they all knew I was close to noticing something. And then came the strangest detail of all: Seed 1, though I didn't yet see it that way. While doing laundry, I found a small yellow sticky note in Adrian's jeans pocket. Only 3 words were written. Board vote. Transfer. I stared at it for a long time. Board vote. Transfer what? Property? Shares? Custody? A financial instrument? Something else entirely? The note didn't say, but it rattled me. It rattled me deeply. Looking back, that was the moment certainty began forming. Not facts, not yet, but a shape. A shape of a secret being built around me. A trap being prepared quietly, carefully, with the expectation that I'd walk right into it. And the most chilling part was this: they were acting as though the outcome was already decided. They thought they'd corner me. But they had no idea that I was already paying attention. Back in the present, back at the birthday party where Marlene dropped that ripped envelope and Lois warned me not to ruin the evening, the pieces from the last 2 weeks began to line up in my mind like a row of dominoes. The overheard conversation. The accountant's folder I wasn't allowed to open. The email draft titled "Before She Asks Questions." The sticky note about a board vote and a transfer. And now this envelope with my name on it, guarded like a weapon. The timing wasn't random. They were waiting for a moment when I would be surrounded by their people, softened by celebration, under social pressure to smile. They wanted plausible deniability. They wanted control. After the last guests began drifting out, Lois approached me with a tone that carried the usual blend of etiquette and threat. "Tomorrow morning," she said, "Adrian will bring you a few documents to sign. Routine updates. Household matters. Let's not complicate it. Routine updates." The same phrase the accountant used. She placed a hand on my shoulder, light enough to seem affectionate, tight enough to be a warning. "We all have a role to play for the family's well-being. I trust you'll do what's appropriate." I held her gaze and said nothing. Silence unsettles people who expect obedience. When she walked away, Adrian stepped in. "We'll go over things together," he said, too quickly. "It's really nothing major. Just signatures for the trust." There it was again. Trust. The word that kept slipping through conversations like a shadow. Our daughter ran up to ask him to help her with her new gifts, so he left with her, leaving me in the dimly lit kitchen surrounded by paper plates and wrapping paper. That's when I noticed the family room door was slightly ajar, and inside, the light was still on. I stepped closer and heard Marlene's voice, low and triumphant. She looked rattled. "That's good. If she hesitates tomorrow, we remind Adrian what's at stake. He won't let her ruin this." Ruining this, what exactly? I felt the blood in my veins cool. They were planning to corner me first thing in the morning. A signature trap. And they fully believed Adrian would pressure me into it. I slipped away before they saw me. I needed clarity before I moved. Later that night, while Adrian was brushing our daughter's hair before bed, I walked past his office and saw his phone lighting up on the desk. New notifications from an unknown saved contact. Boundaries group, thread 2. I frowned. Group? Which group? And why was it named like that? Another notification previewed beneath it. Reminder, meeting at 9 o'clock. Prepare her part. A small earthquake went off under my ribs. Prepare her part. Not our part. Not my part. Her part. Me. The target. I sat on the edge of our bed, thinking through every detail. They had a coordinated plan. A morning meeting. A document requiring my signature. And enough confidence to behave as though the outcome was guaranteed. I didn't know the exact nature of the trap yet. But now I knew the timeline, and that I had less than 12 hours to uncover the truth. When Adrian came to bed, he acted normal again. Too normal. He asked about the party, commented on how grown-up our daughter was looking, then reached for my hand. I let him take it, watching him closely. He wasn't malicious. He was weak. Weak enough to let his family's expectations outweigh his loyalty to me. That was the part that hurt the most. As he turned off the light, he said softly, "Tomorrow will be simple. Don't overthink it." I didn't respond. But I was already overthinking it. I needed answers. And I'd get them before morning. Around 1 a.m., once he fell asleep, I slipped quietly out of bed and into his office. I didn't touch his laptop, I didn't need to. What I needed was his phone, which he'd left charging on the desk. I didn't snoop through messages. I didn't violate privacy. But I did tap the saved contact name I'd seen earlier, Boundaries Group, Thread 2. The moment the screen opened, I didn't need to scroll. I only needed the top line, Seed 2. A pinned message at the top read. Goal: secure the transfer of her voting shares before the board meeting. Do not mention the real purpose. Keep language soft. My stomach dropped. They were coordinating an attempt to make me sign over control of my own voting shares in the family business. Shares I'd earned through 10 years of work. Shares that gave me a say in board decisions. Shares that protected my daughter's future stability. This was a coup. Wrapped in civility. Disguised as routine paperwork. I locked the phone, placed it exactly back on the charger, and stepped out of the room with a silent exhale. Now I wasn't just suspicious, I had trajectory, motive, and method. I wasn't walking into morning unprepared. And since we're here together, let me ask you again, this is the second and last time I'll do it. Have you ever discovered a coordinated plan against you that everyone else swore was harmless? What detail finally confirmed your instincts? Share it if you can. Stories like that remind others they're not imagining things. By the time the sun rose, I was ready. Not angry. Not frantic. Calm. Strategic. Controlled. They wanted a signature. But before anyone got my hand on paper, I was going to get proof. At 7:10 a.m., the house was quiet except for the faint clatter of Adrian making breakfast downstairs. I slipped into the office with a cup of coffee and a clean, focused mind. If they wanted to corner me at 9, that gave me less than 2 hours to gather what I needed. Proof doesn't appear magically. It comes from knowing where the seams of a plan are weakest. In this case, their weakest point was arrogance. They believed I wouldn't look. They believed I wouldn't question. And they believed all communication between them was safely tucked out of my reach. They were wrong. I opened my own laptop and accessed our household cloud backup, something most families forget synchronizes more than just photos. Phones automatically uploaded call logs, calendar entries, and shared documents. Not full messages, but enough metadata to extract patterns. Enough to build a timeline. I scanned recent call logs and saw a flurry of late-night and early morning calls between Adrian, Lois, and Marlene over the last 2 weeks, nearly identical call lengths, often back-to-back, sometimes minutes apart. Coordinated planning. Then I checked the shared family admin folder. It was usually filled with grocery lists and budget files. But now it contained something new, a PDF titled Household Trust Revision, Draft. My muscles tightened. I clicked. The document opened to a clean, formal layout. 23 pages. And on page 8, I found it, the core of the trap, disguised in legal jargon. Transfer of voting rights, primary beneficiary to assign operational authority of shares to secondary trustee board until child reaches age 18. Operational authority. Not ownership. Ownership would stay under my name, which would make it seem harmless. But operational control, voting power, strategic decision-making, influence, that would shift entirely to a board controlled by Lois and Marlene. They didn't want my shares. They wanted my silence. I took a photo of the clause with my phone, then scrolled further. Page 13 included another item. In the event of familial dispute affecting stability, signatures obtained shall remain binding without opportunity for reversal. Irreversible. Meaning if they got me to sign today, no matter what manipulation they used, it would stand permanently. I needed more than this. I needed context showing intent. Coordination. Pressure. Something making it undeniable. I moved to the cloud's audit log. Every shared folder tracks who accessed which file and when. There it was. Over the past 4 days, Lois had opened the trust document 9 times. Marlene 5. Adrian 3. They had been rehearsing this. My hand stayed steady. Small victories require calm. But I still needed one more piece, something irrefutable. A time-stamped confirmation. A smoking gun artifact proving they were intentionally deceiving me. I found it in the most mundane place, the home security app. Our backyard cameras automatically stored audio clips from detected unusual noise levels. Half of these were just birds or our daughter laughing, but 2 nights earlier, at 11:47 p.m., a 32-second clip had been flagged. I played it. The voices were unmistakable, the family room conversation I had overheard through the cracked door, but captured with perfect clarity. Marlene's voice, "She'll be too busy with the birthday tomorrow to think. After she signs, everything is settled. Lois, we must be gentle. No details. Routine updates only. She's smart enough to question things if we push too hard. Adrian, just keep her calm. She trusts me." Then Marlene again, "She won't after today." My heartbeat stayed steady. But a cold, clean determination lined every breath. I downloaded the clip and saved it to a private backup. Then I emailed it to my attorney, someone I'd worked with years before, someone discreet, someone who owed me a favor, with a simple message. "Call me at 8:30. Urgent." I didn't wait for a reply. At 8:18, Adrian knocked on the office door holding a stack of papers. He smiled softly, but his eyes gave him away. "Ready to go over everything?" I motioned him inside, controlled, unreadable. "Put them on the desk." He set them down, flipping to the signature page. "This part is the main update. The rest is standard. It all keeps things simple. Protects the family during transitions." Transitions. Another word they kept rehearsing. I flipped to page 8, showing the clause I'd photographed. "Explain this." He hesitated. Just a second too long. "It's temporary," he said. "Just a structure thing. You won't even feel the difference." I watched him closely. "Temporary until she turns 18. Which is 10 years. That's not temporary." He swallowed. "It's what the board decided." "You mean what your mother and sister decided?" He didn't deny it. Before he could speak again, my phone rang, 8:30 on the dot. My attorney. Adrian shifted nervously. "Do you really need to bring a lawyer into this?" "It's a family matter." I stood, walked to the window, and answered the call. "Yes. I'm here." My attorney's voice was calm. I reviewed the audio. "This is coordinated coercion. You don't sign anything today. And you're protected, legally, financially, strategically." I turned back toward Adrian. He knew the tide had shifted. And the fear in his eyes told me he understood, their plan was already collapsing. Adrian's face drained of color while I listened to my attorney outline my next steps. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just watched him, watched the way his breath shortened, watched the moment he realized I hadn't walked into their plan blind. When I ended the call, he tried to recover. We just wanted to make things smoother. There's no need to escalate this." "We?" I asked quietly. "Or Lois and Marlene?" He flinched. A small, involuntary reaction. Guilt isn't loud, it's microscopic. I placed the document folder back on the desk. "Let me be very clear, Adrian. I'm not signing anything today. Not this. Not anything connected to whatever group chat you and your family set up about me." He swallowed. "Group chat? What group chat?" I didn't even blink. "The one labeled Boundaries Group, Thread 2. His eyes flicked toward his phone on the desk before he could stop himself. That told me everything. When cornered, Adrian didn't fight, he scrambled for excuses. You're misunderstanding, he said. It's just something my mom organized. Not about you. Really, I said. Because the pinned message says otherwise. His mouth opened, but no words came out. That's when the front door clicked open. Lois and Marlene entered like generals arriving at a battlefield they believed they'd already won. Marlene smiled when she saw the folder open. Ah. Good. You're already going through it. We can answer any questions. I turned toward them, calm, centered. Wonderful. I have one. Why were you discussing my signature like a done deal? Marlene blinked once before recovering. We weren't. And why, I continued, were you instructing Adrian to keep me calm so I wouldn't question things? Her posture stiffened. Where did you hear that? I let a bead of silence hang in the air. Does it matter? Lois stepped forward, adopting her genteel, chilly tone. We're not your enemies. We're trying to preserve the stability of the family business. You've been distracted lately. Distracted, I repeated. Meaning I didn't do what you wanted. Lois exhaled with impatience. This isn't personal. It's structural. The board requires unified action, and your ability to make objective decisions has been inconsistent. There it was. The beginning of their narrative. The script they'd rehearsed. Marlene folded her arms. Honestly, we expected you to be mature about this. It's just paperwork. We thought you'd appreciate being relieved of the pressure. Relieved of pressure, I said softly. Or relieved of authority? Her jaw tightened. Then Lois delivered the line they'd been waiting to use, the line that told me exactly how far they were willing to go. If you refuse to sign, the board may interpret that as destabilizing behavior. And instability can affect custody arrangements, financial privileges, even your role in the family's public image. A measured threat. Custody. Public image. Stability. They thought they were playing chess. But they'd given me more than enough ammunition. I stepped closer, my voice low but unwavering. If you're suggesting I'm unfit in any way, you should know something before you walk down that road. Lois lifted her chin. And what's that? I picked up my phone and pressed play. The 32-second backyard security audio filled the room. Every word. Every intention. Every strategized manipulation. Marlene's face drained instantly. Lois's composure shattered just enough for me to see the crack beneath. When the clip ended, the silence was thick. Lois spoke first, but her voice was thinner now. You had no right to record private conversations. I didn't record anything, I replied. Your own words triggered the outdoor audio system. It's automatically stored. Completely legal. Completely admissible. Marlene stepped forward, panic cracking through her confidence. Delete it. Now. I raised my brows. Why? It's just routine updates, right? Adrian finally tried to intervene. Can't we all just sit down and... No, I said sharply, turning toward him. There's no we in orchestrated deceit. He looked stunned, as if the magnitude of his involvement was only now dawning on him under the bright, humiliating truth of exposure. I set my phone down deliberately. Here is what will happen. I'm not signing anything. I will not be pressured, threatened, or misled. And if anyone attempts to claim I'm unstable or unfit, this audio goes to my lawyer, the board, and, if necessary, the court. Lois's mouth tightened to a thin line. You wouldn't dare. You've mistaken my restraint for fear, I said. A mistake you won't make again. She stared at me, the realization settling in. They had lost control of the narrative. Lost control of me. Lost control of the outcome. Marlene finally snapped, frustration bursting through her poise. Fine. Do whatever you want. But don't expect us to clean up the fallout when this ruins the family. I actually laughed. Quiet. Sharp. You've done enough cleaning already. They left without another word. The door closed behind them, and the house dropped into a trembling silence. Adrian stood there, caught between shame and confusion, looking like a man who'd just realized he helped build a trap he couldn't escape himself. For the first time in weeks, I felt the air clear. This wasn't over, but the power had shifted, and I held every piece that mattered. Tomorrow, they'd learn what accountability looks like. I didn't sleep much that night, too many pieces to set in motion, but I didn't feel drained. I felt focused. And when the morning sun cut through the curtains, sharp and clear, I knew exactly how the day needed to unfold. At 9 a.m., I drove straight to the family business headquarters. Not dramatic. Not confrontational. I walked in calmly, dressed in a navy blazer, hair pulled back, everything about me controlled and deliberate. People notice when a woman enters a room with purpose. Especially people who assumed she was about to be quietly removed. The board secretary, Geraldine, greeted me with surprise. "We weren't expecting you today." "I know," I said warmly. "But I'd like to add something to the agenda." Her eyes widened, but she nodded. Geraldine wasn't part of their scheme, she had always been observant, neutral, professional. And she knew how the family operated. My presence alone told her something seismic had shifted. When the board meeting began, Lois and Marlene looked like they were trying to calculate whether I was here to surrender or fight. Adrian looked worse, like he hadn't eaten or slept. He avoided eye contact entirely. I sat down, placed a folder in front of me, and waited until the room settled. Lois cleared her throat. "Before we begin, I think we should move forward with the trust updates." "No," I said softly. Every head turned. "We're starting somewhere else today," I continued. "Specifically, with coordinated actions taken without my knowledge or consent." Lois inhaled sharply. "This is not the place." "It is exactly the place," I said. "Since the actions involved this board, this company, and my voting rights." A murmur rippled through the room. Then I slid a single printed transcript across the table. Not the audio itself, just a clean, time-stamped transcript, courtesy of my attorney. Marlene's face went pale. Lois's hand trembled as she reached for her pen. Adrian slowly lowered his head into his hands. I didn't raise my voice. "This is a record of a conversation you held 2 nights ago in the backyard. A conversation in which you discussed orchestrating my signature under false pretenses, described me as a liability, and strategized how to conceal the real purpose of the documents you prepared." The board members exchanged glances, some horrified, some disappointed, some unsurprised. Lois tried to marshal the last of her authority. "This is taken wildly out of context." We were concerned about her stress levels. "Stop," I said, not loud, but with enough steel to cut the air. I met every pair of eyes in the room. "You attempted to remove my voting rights by deception. You attempted to destabilize my authority as a shareholder. You attempted to coerce a signature you knew I wouldn't give willingly." Silence. "And in doing so," I added, "you violated company policy, ethical guidelines, and exposed the business to legal risk." One board member, an older man named Kellen who had always respected my work, leaned forward. "Is this accurate?" he asked Lois. She couldn't answer. Because the truth was already in the room. I continued, measured and assured. "I'm not pursuing legal action at this time. But I am instituting immediate boundaries." I opened my folder. "Effective today, I am placing my voting shares into a protective trust, one with conditions neither of you control. The trust is managed by my attorney and myself. Any attempt to override or undermine it will trigger an automatic legal review." I watched the reality hit them like a slow-moving wrecking ball. "I'm also requesting a temporary governance review," I said. "A full audit of all communications relating to shareholder decisions. Completely standard. Completely within protocol." Lois looked stunned. Marlene looked defeated. Adrian looked like a man who finally understood what he'd thrown away. The board voted. Nearly unanimous. The review was approved. The trust protection was acknowledged. And the attempted maneuver against me was formally noted as misconduct, without naming them directly, but everyone knew. When the meeting adjourned, I walked out calmly, the same way I came in. No dramatic exit. No gloating. Just a clean line drawn. In the weeks that followed, the review quietly restructured responsibilities. Nothing flashy, nothing scandalous, just a subtle but undeniable reduction in Lois and Marlene's influence. Adrian tried to apologize, first timidly, then tearfully. I accepted the apology but didn't return what he'd been hoping for, the old version of us. Trust takes rebuilding. And betrayal doesn't evaporate just because someone finally feels ashamed. 3 months later, I made one final change. I renamed the Protective Trust. Not after myself. Not after the company. I named it after my daughter. A permanent reminder that my decisions now serve clarity, not control. A symbol of the future I'm protecting, not the past they tried to manipulate. And every time I review it, every time I see her name on that document, it reminds me of the quiet truth this whole ordeal carved into me. Power isn't about dominance. It's about refusing to let anyone else write your story for you. They tried. They failed. And I came out standing, fully, firmly, unshakably, on my own terms.